Welcome back to the last half hour of today's Love Babs, Love Talks program on WNHH-FM. Babs Rosali, our host, the inimitable, is on the mend from some hip surgery. We're wishing her all our love and prayers as she gets ready to return. In the meantime, I'm Paul Bass. I've been filling in for some days this week to keep the conversation going and the good vibes flowing. We got a great guest this morning, Shafiq Abdussabur. He's done so many things over the years in New Haven, from being a community organizer to being a police officer to these days, he is running for Alder, Democratic nomination for Alder in Ward 28, Beaver Hills, one of New Haven's most interesting and diverse neighborhoods. Shafiq Abdussabur, who's also a host, by the way, of Urban Talk Radio on this very radio station. Good morning, and it's so nice to see you, sir.
Good morning, Paul. Thank you for having me on the show. And thank you for everybody out there. Hope everybody's staying COVID safe and having a great New Haven day. We call this a New Haven day.
Right. So we got a lot to talk about your race for Alder, although we've done a few articles about it in the Independent. Before we get to that, I just want to ask you, I was just talking to Rodney Williams about Kamala Harris is coming to town tomorrow, Vice President of the United States. She's going to be whipping through town, hanging out with some politicians. You might be a politician pretty soon. But in any case, anything you would tell her when she comes to New Haven about something she could learn from coming to our city that she could bring back to Washington?
Well, I think that President Harris, one of the things that we could desperately use help in New Haven is obviously the imbalance of how money flows in and out of the city. And what am I talking about? Yale, Harvard, Dartmouth, some of these other Ivy League colleges that, may sit or abut urban areas and take up large portions of the city because they're a college, which is okay. It would be nice that the federal government come in and intervene in between that. Like every year, the residents and the elected officials and whoever the current mayor or the new mayor is should not have to go on a new expedition on how to figure out closing budget gaps and where we're going to get new money from. So it would be nice for her to come down here and see New Haven and look and walk around and say, wow, I can walk through Newhallville and virtually see abstract poverty. And then I can walk up one block from Winchester to, Sheldon Terrace now, or even Prospect Street, and see multi-million-dollar houses without any violence and any other issues that's going on. I mean, and it goes throughout the city in various places. So it would be nice that she sat down, because all the presidents come to Yale. Every presidential term, the president and vice president, they come to Yale. Even the residents don't even get a chance to see them. We don't know how to see them. Yale becomes a fortress. We can't get in there. We can't access that. And we are the people in New Haven that vote in Democratic co-chairs, that vote in ward chairs, that vote in alders, that vote in mayors, that then people from the National Democratic Party come down here, solicit our support, solicit our vote to get people in as president. Hurrah, hurrah, everybody celebrates. And then the president and vice president come to New Haven, and the very people that put them in office, the very people that supported them, the very people whose backs they stand on, you can't even get access to say hi and wave and know they come into the neighborhood. So that would be my conversation with her, is that we need federal money consistently that streams in from the federal government to close the gap on where Yale either can't pay their share of what taxes should be, or don't have it. Whatever the case is, we need the federal government to step in. Since the president,
as you know, they get a lot of federal grants and tax breaks from Yale. But Yale, the problem that New Haven's always dealing with is the state tax exemptions for Yale. What about Charles Grassley's a Republican senator from Iowa, but he's been on a crusade to take away the federal tax status, nonprofit tax status of the very biggest universities. Because anytime someone talks about Yale's tax breaks, they do a good job by getting the ministers of small Black churches saying, you can't take away our nonprofits taxes. We got to have our tax breaks. But that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about $30 billion endowed corporations like Yale, which really are huge businesses. He's saying they don't need tax breaks from the government when Stephen Schwartzman is giving them millions and millions of dollars, let's say. Would you suggest to Kamala Harris that the Biden administration reach across the aisle and work on that?
Well, here's my issue with federal government. Federal government is big, big government, and we see already now the issues that they're already having, with the Republicans and the Democrats, and filibusters on the table, and somebody's talking about, is this a racist vote, and all these different things. We just don't have time to wait anymore. We can't be like that last pinball machine in the arcade where nobody really wants to play, but ain't nothing to do. So the ball is going to get stuck in the corner, but you're willing to, because you got all day. We don't have all day.
You could bang the corner and get the ball to move.
Right. We need something right now. And we know what this is going to be. It's going to be, we're going to be power broken with Yale, back and forth, pay your share, give me money, do this thing. In the meantime, we don't have money to do things that could be done in the city. Yale is going to continue to build and buy, or buy and build, however you want to look at it. They buy, build, and rent. They buy, build, occupy. They buy, build, own. So it continues to expand out. They are the largest, more lucrative developer in New Haven as a private developer. New Haven is not. So what I'm suggesting is the federal government and the President Biden and Kamala Harris, they know this stuff because Yale is their base. So we're just saying, listen, we know this is your base and we get it, and we understand all of the interests that are related to Yale and the federal government. And we just need you now to recognize that and come in. And I guess you would almost call it like a subsidy. Maybe they can give New Haven just a direct subsidy grant. I mean, we do have Congresswoman Rosa DeLore there, and she definitely understands, the pain of New Haven. So just start us off with a $50 million a year subsidy grant, right?
For the losses,
let that grant
for the losses on our
yes, on loss of taxes. The Board of Alder in conjunction with the mayor could sit down and craft out, these are the line items that we would like to have assistance on. It might be around infrastructure and transportation, because what is being left out is, as an entity like Yale builds and an entity like Yale grows, they're also attracting people to the city, which is using certain services for a lot of different reasons. So your roads are being used more. Green spaces are being used more. Sidewalks are being used more. So, we look around the neighborhoods, we look around places like Beaver Hills. I'm sure there's other parts of the neighborhood that I walk, but I'm only running in Beaver Hills, so I'm gonna focus on that. And you have the sidewalks falling apart, and the treescapes, and the stumps are cut. Trees are cut in the stumps, but the stumps are not being removed. Now it's spring, and you can walk around, and you can almost tell which tree limbs are going to fall, likely on what house or on what car, because of the way the weather is going and stuff. So, if these are services that the city is exclaiming they don't have money for, then why can't we get a subsidy grant and go for the big ticket items that the city needs? So then the city can then, if it's an issue about money and not management, can then be able to focus on, putting those other dollars to where they need to go. And the police department is certainly, police department, the fire department, so our public safety services, right? Our public safety services, our schools, our school maintenance, the teachers, right? These are very important structures that help us run the city. Our park and recs department, our parks development. We have park and recs, but we really don't have like a waterway development department that really just focus exclusively on watershed and rebuilding our waterways and, making safer water infrastructure for the city as it relates to recreation and just overall environmental wellness. So we still have a lot of growing room as a city, and we should not be struggling, as my grandparents used to say, pitching pennies. Mm-hmm. We're pitching pennies. And sometimes we're pitching pennies.
We're pinching ideas here with Shafiq Abdussabur, who is running for Alder in Ward 28. He's been pitting the pavement. He retired after a long career at the police department, has done decades of community organizing in New Haven. You talk about tree stumps. You're spending your time walking the streets of Beaver Hills and finding out what's on people's mind and looking around and seeing that all these tree stumps don't get removed, that trees are going to fall down. Why did you make this pivot? You're successful. You have a business. You have a pension. You can do whatever you want in New Haven because people always love your help. You help design the street outreach worker program for the city. Why did you decide to do something that basically doesn't really pay for endless hours to hear people complaining about the little things that are the most important to them in their lives? Why did you want to do this and go walking around and run for Alder?
So, Paul, I decided to run for Alder. Here's the deal. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm a grandfather. I'm a mentor, right? And I'm a neighbor. So, after 23 years in New Haven, I raised my kids. My kids live here in Beaver Hills. I love Beaver Hills. I, I don't plan on moving from this house. Me and my wife had a conversation the other day. She's like, "Where are we going to move to?" I said, "I'm not moving anywhere, right? I can't even think of another place that would like to move or live. I love living here."
I feel
And
that way
so,
too.
I'm running. Yeah. So, I'm running. So there was a chief that came to New Haven some years back with Chief Lamone. Like, he was an African American chief, and he said, young people can't be what they can't see. So, I'm running so that the young people in New Haven that might feel marginalized, that may know that they're actually marginalized, that, feel like, why bother? I'm never going to get a job. I'm never going to get a job at City Hall. I'm never going to become, fire department or whatever the case might be. They can maybe see what I'm doing as a roadmap and where I came from and learn my story. I want my great grandchildren to have an opportunity when they grow up. I have a granddaughter now, my son, and his wife just had a granddaughter. She's about to turn one. The other part of it is, after 21 years of public service, I've had the privilege of working with leaders in the city my entire year. I counseled police chiefs, mayors for this city, and I've worked intimately with other, city and government staff, alders, intimately working with alders, helping them with issues and finding solutions. So I understand systems, I understand community, I understand people, and I understand about how to revise
What
policies
about,
and legislation.
you mentioned finances. What's going to be the big solution to our stubborn budget gap? $66 million, one estimate, that is really the gap between what we need to pay every year and what we can raise. You talked a lot in your campaigns of about you should never have another tax increase. You talked about how we shouldn't defund the police. So if we're not going to cut stuff and we're not going to raise taxes, but we have this huge permanent hole, what's the solution? If you got elected, what would you pursue?
So, what I will say is that, what I have right now, I would be speaking somewhat from ideas, um, in a solution oriented format, because I'm not an alder, and I have not worked on the city budget, and so I do not know all of the intimate issues that are facing the budget. I know what I've experienced thus far in trying to get a better insight on the budget, and what some of the things I experienced when you talk about how we close the budget gap. For instance, there's a program called the 50/50 sidewalk program.
Mm.
And this program, which I guess they're not going to do this year, but in the previous years when they've done it, it basically is, Paul, if you lived on Colony Road and the sidewalk is all, bumped up and the tree is crazy, they would come in and fix the sidewalk, and you pay 50% and the city would pay 50%. And if you didn't pay your 50%, the city then liens your property, right? So that's a program, and that's an operation of way things go. We know that, if you are, one of the elderly particularly in my ward, if you're one of the 11%, which is 65, 65 and over, Ward 28 is 11%. Let's say you are retired and you're on a fixed income and you can't keep up with your taxes, and the taxes keep going up. So you can't keep up with your property taxes. You go downtown and you get the taxes deferred, and they put the taxes on the back end of your house, which basically leaning your property with the taxes. So then that becomes a way. So if you think about it, we increase tax, and when we increase these taxes, if I need money to fix my sidewalk, Do I fix my sidewalk on the 50/50 and let my taxes go on the back of my property and leave my property? Or do I pay my property tax and have the sidewalk leave? I mean, like the homeowner is in a vice. So what I'm going to say is we cannot run our city and have a plan, a budgetary plan based on the GMP of the hardworking people. You just can't. It's not fair. It's not even practical. It's not even practical. It's like when I worked in law enforcement under then it was Chief Ortiz, and we had a lot of crime in New Haven, like we have a lot of crime, unfortunately, right now, a lot of homicides and shootings. And Chief Ortiz used to say, "We are not going to arrest our way out of that." That's how I was able to get the mayor then and the chief to sit down and embrace this new concept of street outreach and working with young people and removing the elements that contributed to gun violence and violence. So what I'm saying is it's the same kind of concept. We have to sit down and look at how we remove the elements that contribute to budget deficits, not trying to figure out how to close the budget deficit every year. We're just trying to close the barn door after while the horses are trying to get out. Closing it after they get out is actually easier if you ever try to close the door when it's like trying to keep your cat and dog in the house. So we have to look at what are the contributing elements that lead to us not having any money in the city. Those things.
And Shafiq Abdussabur running for Alder in Ward 28, lifelong cop, community violence prevention person, not just as a cop, but a street outreach program, negotiating truces. 2021, as you said, uptick in violence. You talk a lot about crime and how we're going to have a safer community. What is your message on the stump about what New Haven needs to do next with public safety?
So I think the first thing, that I want people to understand is understand what violence in New Haven really feels like and looks like. Because we hear numbers and we hear, things like it's COVID and crime is up everywhere. Well, what do you want? What should we do? It's the cops. They're not being proactive. It's people won't come forward. January of last year and January 1st, all the way up until say February 6th, that was like 14 months, right? Roughly from last January to this February, roughly 14 months. We had a total in that time period. In that time period, we had a total of 90% of the gun violence was Black males. So what that's telling us is that if 90% of the people shot in the city of New Haven were Black males, that's obviously an area that we need to focus on, right? We have to look at things a lot different. The other part of it is we can't forget that we actually did take out of the police budget last year, right? Nearly $4 million. I mean, the Alder in this ward voted two things: increase taxes and a vote to take the 4 million or 3.8 million out of the police budget. Now, when all this money came out of the police budget, we still did not have a plan for what we're going to do to address the violence. Violence was still on the uptick. My numbers show the violence was still on the uptick. In fact, this year alone, right up until the time of the young man was shot, Yale student was shot and killed in East Rock, homicide was up 100%. Now, if tomorrow we find out that COVID cases are up 100%, we would shut the city down. We wouldn't even have a big discussion about that. But we have homicides that are up, nearly 100%. And then you have, an overall fatal homicides reaching nearly 500%. I mean, these numbers are like staggering numbers. And now we are in March. It's almost the end of March. So at the end of March of this year, we have roughly 9 homicides.
I know, what a year.
And 19 non-fatal shootings. So as a person that has worked on, crime analysis and things like this, you take that number and you multiply it, and you say, okay, we are looking at least 27 homicides. You multiply it to 9 times 3, you're looking at least 27 homicides. So the question is, what is going to be the plan? What is our
So you're
plan?
getting 3 times 9 there?
Yeah,
It's
yes.
4 times 9. You have 3
Four
more.
times 9, sorry, yeah, 4 times 9. So what is going to be our plan to address these homicides, in the city? Because it's going to get warm. It's getting warm today. We're supposed to hit record numbers of like 75 degrees. The weather's getting warm. School is out because of COVID. We really don't have a plan on what we're doing with our young people. I don't think, there's really a vision for young people in the
What
city
about
of New
summer?
Haven. If
Can
you
we get
grow,
kids back in the schools this summer for the time they missed?
I think it's a good idea. Personally, I mean, we know we already have a massive, one of the largest wealth and economic gaps between blacks and white is in the state of Connecticut. And we know that New Haven is literally like number 2 in poverty, in the poverty rate for the state of Connecticut. So we can already make the assumption that when it comes to education disparity for our young people in New Haven, that those same numbers just repeat themselves. So
So think
we
of
really need
December
some
with the sun,
intensive care.
coming out, 75 degrees, better days lurking. We know that we're going to see you on the street because we've been seeing you on the street. You've been hitting the pavement hard, running for Alder. We're running out of time to let you get back to the street. Do you want to tell us about, before we leave, a moment that you've had on the campaign trail that said, this is interesting. This is why I'm doing it. Here's something I'm learning. The moment you've so far had, because you've been out so much already for months, working hard on this campaign.
I think the most poignant moment that really keeps striking me is the day after there was the shootout on Carmel Street. I think it
Oh,
was like
yeah.
Carmel and Winthrop. And
Yeah.
so my son and my daughter-in-law live on Winthrop near Percival, and she walks with the baby to the house like every day and brings the baby. She loves to walk.
Mhm.
And she said she looked out her window and she just kept hearing gunshots, gunshots, gunshots. And she said, I was so terrified because I would normally be walking down the street at that time. And so the next day I went out and canvassed the area and found out that from the community, they had literally dumped like 30 gunshots. There was 30 bullets all around the neighborhood.
Wow.
And then that's when I just started knocking, I started knocking on all the doors. How you doing? And then that's when I ran into the young lady that you did the story on. And she was just distraught. I mean, it just took me back from being an Alder candidate to like when I was a district commander knocking on somebody's door after
Her
a
car
shooting.
had gotten shot up.
I knew, yes, her car had gotten shot up. I knew no one had gotten, there was no reports of anybody having being shot. And it had happened a day ago. So in my mind, I'm knocking on the door. Hey, how are you? My name is Shafiq. And she comes to the door like flustered, distraught. You could see she was like was visibly aggravated and shaken. And she says, I said, I was wondering if you could. She said, yeah, I need. And she just automatically said, yes, I need somebody. I need an Alder. I need to talk to an Alder right now. I said, well, ma'am, I'm not your Alder. I said, but what I am, I said, I'm a neighbor with resources. So how can I help you? And what it did, it just really showed and reminded me why I need to be in this service, like the service of people, because I was able to talk with her and get her connected with the police department and have them come back and talk to her again and get her in touch with the victim services. And, due to the story that you did, that was later shared with the Beaver Hills residents, the rest of the residents in the ward, who were like, oh, wow, we need to help her. That's our fellow neighbor. And, it just brought the connectivity together. And I think for me, that truly represents who I am. I'm a person, I don't always have the solutions. I'm a person, I always like to try to identify the issues. And I'm a person that likes to bring people together. I like to bring people who need resources together with people that have resources, so that it gives us a better shot at collectively addressing the issue. So I really,
Community
that really stick
connector.
for me.
Community connector.
Absolutely.
Abdussabur, you've been doing that.
Absolutely.
many capacities since I've known you last century, and you're continuing to do it well into the 21st century. Shafiq Abdussabur, what a pleasure to chat with you today. We're running out of time. We could talk for hours, as we usually do. Thanks for coming
Absolutely.
on Love Babs, Love Talk. I've had the pleasure this week of filling.
Thank you.
I'm not going to be
Thank
here
you, Paul.
tomorrow with the Passover holiday coming. But what a pleasure it is to always chat with Shafiq and keep up the good work. Thanks for coming.
Absolutely. And Paul, you have a great Passover. And I want to just say happy Passover to all of the Jewish community in Beaver Hills, because I know this is a good holiday for them. Also, to Paul, every Thursday at 6 o'clock on my Vote Shafiq Facebook, I do a live Facebook every Thursday at 6. I'll be on tonight at 6. We have a hot topic. I will be breaking down crime issues in New Haven and in the ward. So thank you for having me.
Right.
Vote Shafiq 2021, a better Beaver Hills.
All
Thank
right.
you, Paul.
And thank you also to Harry Droz, the miracle man behind the controls.
Thank you, Harry.
Thanks for joining us today. Wishing quick on the men for not quick on the men for Balverall's Ivy. Feeling good when the time's right. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience, performing "I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free." We're listening to it from the group CD, "A Plea for Peace." This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night on WNHH FM, New Haven's home.